Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on what part of the world you're connecting from. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm in the Client Training and Education Department here at TradeStation. And as I said earlier, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you to talk about TradeStation and some of its functionality. Today's topic is getting the most out of TradeStation. So we're going to use the next 45 minutes to talk about some of the features that a lot of users may not be aware of. And you probably are considering opening up an account with TradeStation. You probably have been using TradeStation for a long time. But once we get into a habit of using things one way, sometimes we are not aware of the many things that TradeStation is capable of doing. So the reason for this event is to actually showcase some of the functionality and some of the features that will help you do some analysis and make some trading decisions. That's the whole purpose of this presentation. So we have people connecting from all over the world. I see some chat comments from North Carolina, from California, Philly. So welcome everyone to this event. We're going to use the chat window right there at the bottom left of the player so that we can interact with each other. So if you have any questions or if you need a little bit more clarification on certain topics, feel free to submit your questions there. I will glance once in a while to the chat window to see if I can answer those questions live. And I do appreciate your patience. If I don't get to your question in this live presentation, feel free to reach out to us via phone. We have a great support team that answers questions about TradeStation. So if you like something that I show here on this presentation and you have you need assistance getting there or using the functionality, our support team is great in following or actually walking you through the different steps of the functionality. So let's go and talk a little bit about the structure here. What are the learning points? First of all, we're going to take a look at some advanced charting. Now, most of the time, we get used to using time-based charts that are available in TradeStation. We'll touch on multi-data analysis and charting. How can you combine symbols together to do some more interesting analysis? Many of you may not be aware that TradeStation allows you to take an idea and test it against historical data to have some understanding on how the strategy works in real time, and we'll take a look at that. We'll take a look at the scanner and how you find trading opportunities or stocks that have certain characteristics. It's a great tool as well. And towards the very end, you'll get a very general idea on how you can customize your TradeStation and personalize it so that it helps your style of trading. Okay, we are recording this event. It's going to be added to the collection of videos that we have on the website. So it's just a matter of you going to the TradeStation University and searching for the title of this presentation, which is Getting the Most Out of TradeStation. So an idea that we talk about here is for demonstration and educational purposes. These are not recommendations of TradeStation. Also, active trading is not suitable to everyone. It should only be done with risk capital, and this is something that everyone here should be aware of. I am going to share a document in PDF format that will go into more detail about those disclosures, and those are the two links right there in the chat. You may also go to TradeStation.com to read those disclosures as well. Perfect. Let me switch over here to my TradeStation platform, and hopefully you can see it very clearly. We're going to talk about charting first and some of the advanced features that are here. As I said at the beginning of the presentation, a lot of times we get used to using time-based charts. On the screen that you have in front of you, I see 4 examples of time-based intervals. If you look over here on the top, we have a 90-second bar. So every bar is built using a 90-second interval. Right here on the right-hand side, Okay, you can see my cursor. We have an IBM chart on a daily interval. Again, we talk about the time component. So we see the price activity that happens in one day. At the bottom left, we have a 60-minute. And on the right-hand side, we have a monthly interval. So every bar corresponds to a month. For every time interval that you want to choose in a chart, on this new version of TradeStation, we have a time frame drop-down that allows you to select a time frame very conveniently. Now, there are other very interesting ways in which you can look at data and analyze data. This is a very, every bar represents the same amount of time. But if you think about it, sometimes a bar in the middle of the day, let's say a bar at noon, that probably has not even a quarter of the amount of volume or trading activity compared to a bar at the beginning of the day, are given the same importance on a time-based chart. For example, if you have a 5-minute chart, you know that 5-minute interval at noon is the same length of time as the 5-minute interval at the beginning of the day, where volume, you know, at the beginning of the day could be significantly higher, but on a time-based chart, we give them the exact same period of time. And that's why we also make available some activity-based charts in TradeStation so that you can take into account how active and how volatile a symbol becomes. So over here on this second workspace, I have two activity charts that are also popular here in TradeStation. On the left-hand side, I have a 5,000 tick bar of Microsoft, which means that every time that Microsoft trades 5,000 times, these are 5,000 transactions, you're going to get a bar. Doesn't matter how many shares there are on each one of those trades, it's just counting the number of times that Microsoft trades. And every time that it trades 5,000 times, you're going to get a bar. This is very interesting because, as I said earlier, at the beginning of the day, when there's a high amount of volume, the chart will become more sensitive. You're going to get more bars appearing at the beginning of the chart. So for those type of indicators that are analysis techniques that are sensitive to trading activity, it may be a good idea to apply those also to an activity-based chart so that they become sensitive and they react faster because we have more bars whenever there's more volume. The chart here on the right-hand side is not counting the number of transactions, it's actually counting the number of shares or contracts traded. So if you look at any security, even if it's a futures contract, and right here I have an example that says 1 million share bar. You know, this is a chart that is based on number of shares traded. And every time that Microsoft trades 1 million shares, it's going to create a bar. And as I said on the tick chart, if there's more volume, if shares are being traded in high numbers, you're going to see the chart react faster because of that activity. These two chart types are also available from the time frame. You can see that we have the ticks at the very top, and we don't have the share or the number of shares or contracts here, but if you're looking for something more specific, just click here at the bottom of this drop-down that says Customize, and that'll take you to a dialog where you can make all sorts of combinations. Here on the Settings tab, notice that I can choose volume, I can choose tick, and then you have all the other time intervals. One thing that I did here on these two charts, these two activity charts, for example, this one on the left-hand side that is counting number of ticks or number of trades. If you look at the bottom of that chart, I have a volume indicator, but the volume indicator, you can see how it's counting number of shares. So I'm not blind as to the number of shares that are being traded. You know, the bars at the top are being built on number of transactions, but you can look at the bottom at the volume and see how many shares are being traded on each one of these bars. The opposite happens here on the right-hand side. At the top, the bars are being built using number of shares being traded. But at the bottom, if you look here at the volume, we have number of transactions. So you also see how many ticks are being traded on that specific bar. This volume setting, because volume can be displayed in these two ways. And a lot of TradeStation users may not be aware that you can switch how TradeStation is reading volume. That is a setting that we find in the symbol. And the quickest way that I can tell you how to access this setting is by double-clicking on any of the bars or the candlesticks. If you double-click and you go to the Settings tab, you're gonna be able to come over here and there's a setting here. There's a drop-down here that says for volume. You have two options. You can have a tick count that gives you the number of ticks, and then you have trade volume, which is the number of shares or contracts traded. Great feature, available on TradeStation, and you can switch your chart around to make it more sensitive to trading activity. Now, one thing is true. You may have a lot of volume. Like, for example, a symbol like Microsoft may be trading very frequently. And that's a lot of trades, you know? But what happens if the price doesn't move? I mean, you may have 5 million shares traded on Microsoft, but the price is just static. I mean, maybe some indicators, some analysis techniques are dependent on trading activity, and sometimes you want those indicators to react to the number of shares or the number of trades that occur. But sometimes you are interested in price movement. That's why another chart type that TradeStation provides are charts based on price. These are very interesting because these type of charts do not take into account time and do not take into account activity or volume. All they care about is price movement, which is interesting because you have to tell the chart what you consider to be a significant price movement, and the chart will monitor that price movement and only react if that price movement is met. It doesn't care about how long it takes. It doesn't care about how much volume there is. It only looks at price, and if it moves, you see the chart move. A clear example of this chart is this one that I have here at the bottom right. I'm sorry, this is the bottom left. It's called a range bar. When you create a range bar, of course, you tell TradeStation, I'm looking for a range of $1. Here I have a chart of Apple. So you see how it says range bar 1. So it's looking for a $1 movement, which for Apple is very easy to reach throughout the day. It's being priced at $221.55, but every time that Apple moves a dollar, you're going to see a bar build right here on the graph. So what happens? This type of chart will be static. It won't do anything because it only reads price movement and it will only react to price movement. Walter, I'm using TradeStation 10, the new version of TradeStation. If you don't have it, we are doing a gradual release and a gradual upgrade, so you should get it soon. If you want to get it sooner than later, you'd have to join the test program of TradeStation. So if you're interested, if you're using an older version of TradeStation and it doesn't look like the one that I'm showing you right now, you can go to the Client Center. And the Client Center, you find it on TradeStation.com. You click Login at the top. In the Client Center, you're going to find a link that says Join the Test Program, and this will give you the most recent version of TradeStation 10. The nice thing about now installing TradeStation 10 is that you don't have to give up your 9.5. It doesn't overwrite it. So you can pretty much install 9.5 and 10 on your computer and switch back and forth if you want to do that. Okay. If you want to remove, I see another question right there in the chat. If you want to remove the volume indicator from the chart, that's simple to do. Let me go back here to one of my charts. This one has volume right there at the bottom. The easiest way is just to click on any of the lines of the volume indicator, and you're going to see some white boxes appear on the indicator itself, just letting you know that the volume has been selected. And you can press delete on the keyboard, and you can see how the volume goes away. That's the easiest way that I find how to remove indicators. Just click on it to select it and press delete on the keyboard. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. So I was talking about the price movement charts. These are great because they filter out a lot of the noise. You know, when the chart is moving and there's no clear direction of an uptrend or a downtrend, these are the charts that pretty much show you that. They remove that noise that sometimes is distracting, and only cares about significant price movement. Of course, as a TradeStation user, you have to determine what is that significant price movement. Right now, I'm looking at an Apple chart, and $1 may be a little bit too small, considering that, Apple could move anywhere between, 10 or 20 different points within a day. Sometimes to help me out, what I use is an indicator in TradeStation called the average true range. So I put that indicator on a chart, take a look at what the average range is, and sometimes I use that number as a target for my price movement charts. All right. I see your question, Neil, about the difference between red and cyan. I'm not really sure I see that on the screen. If you can point me to what you're looking at, give me a little bit more detail. Oh, on the volume chart. Okay. On the volume chart, what Neil is asking about is the difference between the colors. This is a built-in indicator of TradeStation, so all of you can go to Studies and add this indicator. It's called the volume average. And what it does, it color codes the volume based on what the price is doing on the candles or on the bars. So if there's a bar that closes higher than the previous bar, it's going to paint the volume cyan or blue. And if the close price is lower than the previous close, it's going to paint it red. So something like up volume and down volume. And that yellow line that you see there going across, that yellow line is volume average. I find it to be very interesting because it calculates a volume average. When we go over to RadarScreen, you're going to see a great tool that allows you to do real-time scanning. A lot of times I like to use the volume average as an example because you can identify periods where volume exceeds the average. That's something that every trader should be aware of. If you have any symbol that in the middle of the day has a spike in volume, the volume average is going on with this symbol. Why is this volume greater than the average? And this is something that you can use in RadarScreen to monitor hundreds of symbols in real time. Okay. Rick, if you create a strategy in 9.5, meaning that if you wrote it or if you set it up, everything can be transferred over to 10. Yes, that's totally true. In fact, there is a utility when you install TradeStation 10 that will recognize that you have an older version, and it'll ask you, do you want to convert everything over to the new version of TradeStation? It's very convenient. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. Let me show you one feature that is also part of the TradeStation platform. This is multi. All right, you guys can hear me now, right? Sorry about that. Let me just start my screen sharing. All right, great. Give me just a moment. For some reason, my screen froze. And thank you for letting me know. Otherwise, I would have just kept on going and going. So, and I'm glad that everybody stayed here. Sometimes, we have technical difficulties. So I appreciate the fact that you just stayed on and hung on in there. Let me just turn on my cam so that you guys can hear and see me. Okay, there we go. And let me start my screen sharing so that you can see my TradeStation. I was talking about, multi-data chart. I was excited about the whole feature here, and the browser just died on me. Okay, so everybody can see my TradeStation, right? Excellent. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about multi-data analysis. I was saying that this is a great tool, and the way that I created this chart is just by clicking Data and Add Symbol. Now, I have the symbols here on the left-hand side also as a reference because I also like to color code each one of these symbols to see what the lines are when I enable percent change chart. So I want to do a comparison between these 5 airline stocks and see which one has outperformed the other or which one has underperformed the other. So let's go ahead and click on Style. It's where the percent change chart is. I come down here to percent change chart, and I'm just going to click on Enable right here on the right. Perfect. What it does, it takes all those symbols and it turns them into percent change lines, and then overlays those 5 symbols simultaneously at the same time on the same subgraph, so you can see how one compares to the other. Now, I want you to notice something. I'm going to take this chart and I'm going to scroll all the way to the back. If you can see right there on the back of the chart, you see all the symbols are starting on the same point. So it doesn't matter how much history you have on the chart. In this example, I have about 2 years of historical data. The percent change chart will start calculating from that beginning point and show you how each one of these lines changes and percentage-wise based on price, of course. So from 2 years ago, if I scroll all the way to the front, you can see that the airline that has outperformed all others is the cyan line, which is Southwest Airlines. If you look over here on the left, cyan is Southwest Airlines. I can also do the following. I can click and hold my mouse button on the chart, and I can see all the different columns for the different airlines that I'm looking at. So in this case, Southwest Airlines, since the beginning of 2 years ago, is up about 70%. That's a great price increase. The one that has performed the least is the yellow line down here, which is JetBlue. JetBlue is only 15% up from the beginning of 2 years ago. There's an interesting concept right here. Now, let's say, for example, that you want to take this one step further, and you want to say, well, I want to see how these airlines have performed since the beginning of 2018. I'm going to do this. I'm going to click on the background of the chart, and I'm going to bring it right here to the date for the very first day of January of the year 2018. The first day is January 2nd. You can see the date right there on that in that overlay. You see it right there on the top left corner of that overlay. So I'm going to right-click in this area. I just click right-click on the same area that I was seeing the date of January 2nd. I'm going to go to Style, Percent Change Chart, and take a look at the different options that are here. I can say calculate from first bar, or calculate from last bar, or calculate from this bar, which is the option that I want. It'll take that date and make it the starting point for all the different percentage calculations. When I do that, take a look. You see the crosshair right here in the red lines? That is the 0 point. You can see that it starts right there in the year 2018 according to the time scale. And now you can see the performance of all these 5 stock airlines or airline stocks from the beginning of 2018. And you can see the one that has performed the best is the red line, which is Spirit. Spirit is about 6% up since the beginning of the year, as opposed to, look at the green line. The green line is American Airlines, is down 22% for the beginning of the year. So if you're looking at the transportation sector, specifically the airlines, this is a great tool so that you pick a stock that is performing in the direction that you're putting in your trade. You know, sometimes you may be following the same tendencies of the stock. For example, in this case, Spirit is the one that is outperforming. Maybe you want to go long that stock. What about the one that is underperforming, like, for example, American Airlines? So tools like this do allow you to compare symbols together and see if you're putting your eggs in the right basket. It's a great tool. Okay. Great. Thank you, Walter. That's a great suggestion, too, to monitor, you know, the trading activity throughout the day. Perfect. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example. I'm going to click on this other workspace that I have. This is a charting workspace. You can see that the chart on the left-hand side is already enabled for percent change chart, but I have 2 symbols. I have an orange line. Let me see what that is. The orange is the $ SPX, which is the S&P 500 index, and in this case, the green line is IBM. So I'm comparing the performance of IBM to the index overall. IBM is down 2%, as opposed to the S&P 500, which is up 36%. So sometimes, you know, things like this make you rethink your holdings and say, why am I holding a position on this particular symbol if it's not performing as well as the index overall? Now, the way that I set up this chart right here on the left-hand side is that it's linked You can see how there's a symbol link right here on the top of the chart, and I have the same type of link right here on the radar screen, so that I can click on any of the symbols in my radar screen and change the symbol that I'm comparing to the S&P 500. So let's say, for example, that I want to take a look at American Express. I click on AXP. You can see that AXP gets loaded on my chart, and you can see that AXP is up 74% as opposed to the index, which is only up 36%. So now we find a stock that is outperforming the overall index. The S&P 500 is an index that is representative of 500 stocks in the market, and it's interesting when you find a stock that has outperformed the index significantly like this one. One indicator that I'm going to share with everyone is this indicator in my radar screen. Notice that it's called Relative Strength RS. You're going to find it in the Documents folder of this player. Let me share the link with everyone here. This indicator only works on TradeStation. You can see how it has an extension ELD. So if you're interested in looking at this indicator, you're going to have to download that ELD to your computer. Make sure you save it to your hard drive, and then double-click on the file, and it'll import it into your TradeStation. So there's that ELD, I think it has 4 custom indicators that one of my colleagues created, and you can use in your own TradeStation. So yes, and Walter's asking if I can scan these performers. I can. Now this indicator right here is going to calculate a series of performance compared to a benchmark. So let me show you how that is set up. I'm going to right click on the actual header and edit this indicator for all symbols, because this is something that you would have to do on your side. When I go here, the inputs is the place where it tells you how far back you're going to look and what symbol you're going to compare the performance to. So in this case, we have Spider, using it as a benchmark, and the periods are 3, 13, and 33. Now let me move this over a little bit, because we have to talk about interval right here. The interval column determines what type of data is being used. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but RadarScreen is one of those tools that pretty much replaces charting in a way that you can do a historical chart open. So in this case, if you have a RadarScreen that is set to daily, and you have this input that is set to 3, 13, and 33, is using daily bars, so 3 days ago, 13 days ago, and 33 days ago. If you change that interval to weekly, then we're talking about weeks right here in the interval. So we're using Spider as a benchmark. I'm going to click OK. I can type in Spiders right here at the bottom just as a reference. You can see that when you type in the benchmark, you can see how it colors it in some sort of a gold color, so you can see where the benchmark is in relationship to every other symbol. And now you can do some sorting. Let's say that you want to see which symbol has performed the most year to date. You double click it, double click again if you want to do a descending order, and you can see that Nike, as part of the Dow Jones Industrial, this is the Dow Jones Industrial Index, Nike is up 34%. The S&P is only up 9%, but you can see some other stocks that are underperforming. So it's a great way for you to sort in any of these columns. If you want to see a short term, you double click on the short term column, and you can see that Caterpillar is the one that's showing you the most increase or the most better performance compared to the S&P. So great example to use relative performance. Again, it's an indicator that's available in that link that I provided you. Neil, the Documents folder is at the bottom right corner of the player. So if you click there, you're going to find the disclosures. And I also shared the link right there in the chat. So if you click on the chat link, it should also download the file for you. Bob, this presentation is being recorded and is probably going to be available in a few days in the TradeStation University. Excellent. All right, so let's go ahead and continue. Scanning. Finding, great opportunities in the market is challenging. I'm going to show you some scanning tools in TradeStation, starting with the hot list. Hot list is simple to use. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but it's just a way for you to look at different stocks that match certain criteria. The criteria is up here in this dropdown, right here in activity. Right now, I have it set to percent gainers. So these are the percent gainers for today, which means that they've increased in price the most since the close of yesterday. Now this is based on a percentage. Notice this top symbol, ASCMA. It's up 92% from the close of yesterday. I don't think I have a chart here. Usually I just have a chart right here on the right-hand side. So let me go ahead and do that. Let me click on chart analysis. Bring this chart over here to the right-hand side. All right. Let me make this chart just a regular candlestick. I may have set this as the default, and now it's showing as a line. So I'm going to go to Style. Let me do a candlestick and set that as the default. Okay, so now we have the candles, and I can link the two windows together by using my linking buttons right here on the top. And let me take a look at that symbol, ASCMA. I click it, and you can see the history right there. Now this is an intra-day chart. You can see how in the morning this symbol started off below $1, and it's currently trading higher than $2. So something happened to this company. It's called Ascent Cap Group. Not really sure. I'm not really familiar with it. But notice how the hot list is a great tool for you to find stocks that you probably hadn't thought of before. So hot list is one of the simpler scanning tools in TradeStation. Just come over here and say, let me look at the percent losers instead. This stock, THO, has lost 13% of its value since the close of yesterday. If I click on it, that's the way it looks. Yesterday it was trading above 100. Right now it's trading at 91. So this great, again, I emphasize this again, it's a great tool for you to find candidates that you probably haven't thought of trading before. Okay, let's go ahead and continue. We do have some implied volatility indicators on TradeStation. You may take a look at those. I don't have one set up right at the moment. We have some other implied volatility indicators in Optionstation Pro. So you can probably talk to tech support and help them and ask them to give you some examples of implied volatility. Talk about RadarScreen. As I said before, this is our power horse. It allows you to do real-time scanning on hundreds of stocks simultaneously. RadarScreen is literally showing you a chart on each one of the rows. So each row is loading historical data to do calculations on technical analysis. Take a look right here on this RadarScreen. I have a MACD. The MACD is an indicator that you would usually find in a chart, like for example right here on the right-hand side. But I inserted it as a column in my RadarScreen, and it's showing me the most recent value of that MACD. Not only that, but you can turn on your RadarScreen to give you an alert if there's a MACD crossover. I believe I have it turned on already. In fact, I know for a fact that I do. And if you look at the column, I don't have sounds going off or pop-up messages. I've set my RadarScreen to give me a little marker if an alert is being triggered. Now notice over here there's a red marker on this symbol, which is Goldman Sachs, and there's a red marker up here for this symbol, which is 3M, MMM. Now the one for Goldman Sachs is a little darker, which implies that the alert that I'm looking at is a past triggered alert. The one that is bright red is the one for 3M. So if I click on that symbol and I look over here on my chart, take a look. Over here on the far right, let me open this up a little bit. You can see how on the MACD I had a crossover from the negative to the positive, and that constitutes a real-time alert. Now doing this with one chart is challenging because you don't have the time to be glued to the screen waiting for that crossover. But I can set up my RadarScreen with a MACD column. I can turn it on for alerts, and I can let my RadarScreen do all the number crunching, do all the work in the background, and let me know when certain criteria is being met, in this case a MACD crossover. It's an interesting concept, and this works with all sorts of analysis techniques, not only the ones that are built into the platform, but also some custom analysis techniques that are interesting. For example, this candlestick pattern for RadarScreen. This column that you see on the far right, it's a column that will identify candlestick formations in real time for you, and it'll give you an alert if something is happening. Now, this indicator that you have here is not built into the platform. However, it is part of that download package that I provided everyone in this class. So if you download that ELD, that's one of the indicators that is included there. So it's a 2-indicator package, a column for RadarScreen, and you have a charting indicator. I believe when you look at the 2 indicators, one will say RS at the very end for RadarScreen, and the other one will say CH for charting, and that's the way that you differentiate one from the other. Okay, so I see a question from Francois about how to set up a column for MACD and set up alerts. Very simple. You can click on the plus here on the far right, which allows you to look at all the different indicators you can insert. Let me see if that shows up for me. Notice that this is all the indicators that I can use. So MACD is one of those indicators in this list. So what I did, I just selected it, I added it, and then once you have it on the radar screen, it's very simple to turn on an alert. What I do is I right-click on the header, Studies, then you edit the MACD for all symbols, and this is the same for every indicator. So the same way that I'm doing it for MACD applies for this, candlestick indicator that I'm showing you, and any technical idea that you want to use in your radar screen. So over here, I just go to the Alerts tab, and all you need to do is enable the alert. Enable the alert and choose the way that you want to be alerted. Sometimes, for the most part, when I turn on an alert for hundreds of symbols, I disable messaging. I don't want any pop-up messages, especially if there's a big turn in the market and you have, hundreds of symbols triggering an alert simultaneously. You don't want to sit there and having to click through every single confirmation window. So sometimes when you turn on an alert for hundreds of symbols, like I'm doing here, you set no, but you still leave the enable alert checked. That enables the alert, and you can see the alerts in a visual form. You see the little markers on the right-hand side. Oh, and yes, there are some columns that you may want to hide. For this indicator, yes, it's true. Some indicators have multiple columns that you may not want to see. Sometimes for example, if you insert an RSI, which is the relative strength index, you put it on, and then you have a column that has 70 all the way down, and then you have another column that has a 30 all the way down, and sometimes you don't need to see those in a column format. So what do? You right-click on, go to Studies, and then you have an option here that says Show, Hide, Plot, allow you to manage your indicators in a very interesting way. Perfect. Now take a look at the indicator that I showed you. This can also be sorted, and if you have it linked to the chart, notice that ExxonMobil is giving me a doji on the current bar, and you can see it right there on the chart. Let me open up the chart a little bit. Not sure if you see the name doji. It's probably a little bit too small, but I see the word doji here because that's the candle that is being formed at the moment. But historically, you also see all the different candlestick patterns that have been identified in the past. So the charting indicator will look at historical formations. The candlestick column, which is very similar indicator, will look at candlestick formations on the current bar. Okay, perfect. The scanning. So when we talk about scanning, we already covered the simple one, which is the hot lists. And by the way, all those scanning tools are up here. When you go to Apps, you find RadarScreen in there, you find the scanner, and you find the hot list. Those are all built into the platform, and they're ready for you to use. The one that I'm showing you right now, it's the scanner. The scanner is a type of window that remembers every scan that you create. There are some sample scans that you can create, that you can use right out of the box. If you right-click, I believe that you right-click, you go to Settings, and there we go. If you go to Settings, there's Sample Scans. You also have a Settings button up here on the scanner where you can find the sample scans there as well. Big movers, this one that I'm highlighting here on the left-hand side is one of the default scans or sample scans. Doesn't mean that those are the ones we recommend. It's just different setups. But you can take that scan and take a look at it and see how you can modify it. Let me go ahead and customize this and show you the scan criteria for this. Okay. Hopefully this information is clear. Maybe not so much. Let me go ahead and cancel out of this and go to the settings here instead. This particular scan, which is called Big Movers, is looking for stocks that have a price between 10 and 100, that have a volume average greater than 500,000 shares, market cap greater than 100, and then it looks at a series of percent change. For the past 5 days, it's looking for a 5%, and for the past 26 weeks, it's looking for a 20% increase. So these are stocks that are appreciating in value. The nice thing about the scanner is that when you run it, it's going to look at the stock universe and start eliminating any stocks that do not match this criteria. And you're only left with the symbols that match every single filter. When I run it and I go to the results, you can see that there's 32 symbols or 31 symbols on this list. But take a look at the log, which is interesting. And the log is interesting because in the log, you can see how the stock symbol universe is 8,659. And you just notice how quickly TradeStation went out there, filtered all the symbols, and returned the symbols that match that criteria. So out of all those 8,500 symbols, only 31 symbols meet the criteria, and it lists those symbols for you. It shows you the closing price, the volume average, all the filters that you selected. It'll show you the values so that you can confirm. And from here, I can link my scanner to a chart, and I can look at these symbols. I can click on PRQR and look at the historical price fluctuations of that symbol. So it's a great concept. And one thing that is also a characteristic that sets our scanner apart from other scanners out there in the industry is that you can do scans on technical analysis. Let me show you this one. This one is one that I customized or created myself. And if I customize it, notice that I'm using volume average. I'm also combining some fundamental data, like for example earnings. I'm looking for stocks that have positive earnings. Not only positive earnings, but I'm also looking for stocks that have increasing earnings from one period to the next. And take a look over here. I have an RSI. Now this is really cool because this is an RSI that you use in charting. And you can scan the whole universe of stocks and look for stocks that have a particular RSI value. Now I can say, give me RSI greater than 80. All right. Once I do that, I can run this. Notice that it's running. It's coming down to 302 symbols. It's going to run or calculate the RSI on those 300 symbols, and no symbols met the selected criteria. So maybe no symbols are above 80. Let me go ahead and customize again. And let me see if we have the opposite. Let me see RSI less than, and let's do 20 right here. And let's run this. So it's going to run again. So you can run through different scenarios and use these technical stocks that have certain criteria. See, there's no oversold either. That's interesting. So let's go ahead and customize that even more. That's kind of odd. Let me increase this to 30 and see if we have any oversold. It's going to run again for those 300 symbols. There we go. So out of the 8,600 symbols that are in the stock universe, we have 5 that are showing a value of RSI lower than 30. You can see the RSI value right here. So from here, I can link it to a chart and say, let me look at this symbol, TPH, and you can see how it's trading right now with an RSI of 28.94. It's interesting concept. Let me take some questions here from the chat. Hopefully the recording will be fine, Linda. I don't see any problems with the recording. I have it on a side computer here, so it'll be. Then Neil, the question: can the scanner be linked to RadarScreen? To a certain extent, and I want everyone to be clear about this, because the scanner, this tool that I just used right now, runs when you click on that run button, but the results are static. That's why when you look at the left side of the scanner, it has a date and a time stamp on it, so that the results are for that particular date and time. RadarScreen is a real-time scanner. So you put the symbols in, and it looks for real-time events that are happening. So each window is used differently. Can you take the symbols from the scanner and move them over to RadarScreen? Definitely. For example, if you do your scanner and you narrow down the universe to, hey, these are my 50 symbols based on the criteria that I'm looking for, then you can take those 50 symbols and then copy them into RadarScreen. Okay? Perfect. And yes, Louis, you can pretty much screen a watch list that you build. So you can build your own custom list of symbols and only filter that list of symbols in here. Most definitely. A little bit over our time by 5 minutes, but I want to show you one last feature of TradeStation, which is strategy trading. I'm not sure if you guys are aware that TradeStation allows you to test strategies. This is a clear example. I'll just use 5 more minutes of your time. I've combined this Exxon. This is Exxon right here. You see the symbol on the top left. I've combined it with the Bollinger Band. If you're familiar with the Bollinger Band concept is looking for price extremes. So whenever the price goes outside this Bollinger Band channel, it said that it's reached an extreme, and it's most likely for it to come back into the normal range of prices. So if it reaches an extreme on the top, that is a bearish signal, thinking that it just bounce and go in the opposite direction. If it penetrates the bottom band, or if it goes outside but on the bottom side, Bollinger Band concept says it's going to come and bounce, go up, and that would be a bullish signal. Now what if you had traded that idea exactly how it comes out of the box? Whenever it goes outside the channel on the upside, you go short, and whenever it goes outside the channel on the bottom side, you go long. Well, there's a strategy that is based on that idea. We have some built-in strategy components that you can add to the chart. Right here, I have the Bollinger Band strategy already inserted. By the way, if you're looking for strategies, they are available here on Studies, and you can add a strategy. And I just added the one that's called Bollinger. I didn't do any tweaks. I just added it the way that it shows up in the box. And this is for ExxonMobil. You can see that as soon as I put it on, you get these little arrows showing you where the strategy would have bought and would have sold ExxonMobil based on the Bollinger Band idea. The blue arrows are my long entries. So notice here where my cursor is, you can see the price penetrated the channel on the bottom side, and the strategy generates a long trade. On this other side, the price activity penetrates the upper side of the channel, and it generates a short trade. Interesting concept. And I have I think I have 1 year worth of data here. So if I scroll back and I click and hold on the mouse button, you can see that this goes back to September 20th, 2017, which is exactly 1 year at a 30-minute interval. So once I have a strategy there, I can come up here called a strategy performance report. This will give me a report about how the strategy did. And take a look. I'm just going to point out a few details of this report. For example, Total number of trades, we have 70. In 1 year, it traded 70 times. 68% of those trades were profitable. If I had traded this strategy the way that it is right now, I would have made $1,603. Now, the likelihood of this happening again going forward, that is something that you have to evaluate, because that's something that we always have to disclose. The fact that a strategy did or made this amount of money in history does not mean that it will do the same thing going forward. But at least it gives you an understanding on how the strategy behaves and how some strategy signals may work and some others don't. Right here, we have a profit factor of 1.49. So for every dollar that we lost, we made $1.49. We have different tabs down here. For example, we have the performance graphs. This is our equity curve line. You see how when you come over here, even though we saw that the strategy made money, you look at the equity and it's not a good strategy. Of course, we are now in the positive side, but look how at the very beginning. This is not a strategy that you would have committed to and followed through because it was giving your equity away. In fact, at one point it was on the negative side. You would probably have given up on this strategy, even though it's making money at the moment. So sometimes looking at other advanced graphs and seeing how different strategy signals behave in history does give you an understanding on the strategy, and it helps you make a decision as to if you want to stick to a strategy rule or not. So this is a strategy testing, part of the TradeStation platform. We have additional videos in the TradeStation University that explain all these features in more detail. I know that I did not go into detail on how to implement a lot of these things, but this is more like, hey, don't miss out on all these different features and functionality that is built into the platform, and this way get the most out of the TradeStation platform, which is designed for that purpose, so that you can use all these different tools and make your analysis and your trading so much better. Right? I don't see any more questions in the chat. I believe that I have to end the presentation at this time because we ran out of time, but I just want to say that it was a great pleasure spending these 60 minutes with all of you. At the beginning I said I was going to spend 45 and I took an extra 15, so I apologize for that, but I just wanted to make sure that I showed you every feature that I was planning on showing you. But thank you everyone for being here. I hope that you can start using some of these features, and again, if you have questions about any of these tools that are available in TradeStation, give our support team a call. You find the numbers on TradeStation.com and you'll get somebody on the phone, a representative, that will walk you through all these different features that are part of the platform. Thank you everyone. Have a great day and enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.